All right, folks. Hey, this is Art Shit again, and it's Let's Be Reasonable. It's our show. We are in episode 2 of our expose into what is wrong with the right. So, and of course, we're talking really about the right wing faction of the Republican Party. And I said in episode 1, I believe after it's all said and done, I mean, look, they're winning when it comes to the abortion in the courts, when it comes to affirmative action in the courts. Uh, they have some wins that they can tally up and say, yeah, we're doing well, but they're still upset, right? And what doesn't make sense to me is that the things they wish to kind of like sink their teeth into are items that, you know, really shouldn't be a problem. I mean, for example, I brought up critical race theory, and they want to ban it from being taught in school, in like primary and secondary school. I ain't talking about college. I'm talking. It's not even being taught at the college level. It's on the graduate level. So after 4 years of college education, you go off to a grad school or you get some grad school training, right? In whatever discipline, and you learn a little bit about and actually I think it's probably more so on the criminal justice side. So that's a criminology type graduate level course. They're upset about it, and they don't want it to be taught in public schools or anywhere, right? But it's not being taught anyway. So you scratch your head and say, that's a little odd, right? So what I've done, I can look at that issue and I can tell you that there's a couple more. Now, think about it. Sex education in third grade. It's not even being done. What's wrong with them? Right? So you ask yourself these questions and you just kind of scratch your head and say, well, wait a minute. It seems like they're jumping up and down and they're looking for attention. But the issues that they're jumping up and down about obviously can't be the issues that ail them, right? So, from my standpoint, I began to look around, and what I've come up with is, again, I believe it's the economics. So, when I talk about this in episode 2, I believe after seeing episode 1, you know who the factions are, right? And we'll get back to episode 1 because that's important when we start to draw the conclusion in episode 5. You'll see this kind of set up relatively well, and you may say to yourself, "Aha, that's interesting," because ultimately it truly is. So just stay tuned. We'll get to episode 5. But right now, episode 2. What I wanted to do in episode 2, I want to tell you about supply side economics. So on the other side of my comments here, I'm going to, I got to tell you, I've thought about having the Cato Institute tell you about supply side economics. I thought about the Keynesians. Remember, the Keynesians pretty much dominated the economic scene in the United States from the 1930s up until really like the 1980s, right? So I thought about them telling the story of why supply side economics or why not, right? But I decided to settle on one Art Laffer. And I got to tell you, I have the utmost respect for Art Laffer and the utmost respect for supply side economics. I have that because I do understand what it's all about. And once you understand what it's all about, then, you can choose as to whether or not you choose to adopt that notion or not. But adopting supply side economics means you must also adopt some risk. Now, I know I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's hear from Art Laffer, and then we'll talk about it some more on the other side.
Have you ever heard of an economy being taxed into prosperity? I haven't.
The United States has risen from the depths of recession.
In 2016, Tennessee had a $2 billion surplus. How do they do that? They have no income tax. They have low sales tax. How do they do that?
The Laffer curve is about the most recognizable economics graph of modern history.
I mean, even the people who hate it call it that. Why do they hate it? Because it thwarts them from taking control of your lives?
The Keynesians say the government drives the economy. Arthur says, no, private sector drives the economy. And inside that framework, incentives matter.
Every economist understands the Laffer curve. They just didn't use it. If you tax people who work and you pay people who don't work, you're going to get a lot of people not working.
What you just did was explain human nature, right? And if you can understand human nature, you can understand economics. That's it.
Art's impact on economics is enormous.
I mean, Reagan cut the highest tax rate from 70% down to 28%. We made ourselves a production haven for the world.
It is time to reawaken this industrial giant, to get government back within its means, and to lighten our punitive tax burden.
The core principle of Arthur Laffer's economics is that the American economy will always respond stupendously to freedom.
Whether we call it economics or not, we're making economic decisions.
Markets are people. That's what gets lost sight of.
Remove the impediments in the economy and you will see the economy improving itself. The clothes you wear, the houses you build, the roads you drive. Without economics, none of this would exist.
Arthur revolutionized economics.
There's no place in America that couldn't benefit from Laffer policy.
This is not the end of America. These are the seeds to get the regrowth of America. And it's all supply side economics.
Not stifle.
It's the way the world works.
Okay, so Art Laffer told us about supply side economics, and I'm gonna boil it down for us, right? So he basically said that you want to cut taxes, right? You want to cut spending, right? You want to deregulate as much as humanly possible, right? You want to have a good trade policy, which is free trade, and you needed a good monetary supply. In a nutshell, that's what there's one like page that or theme, what do you want to call it? Yeah, well, anyway, so he told us those different pieces. Now, and if you can get past the great music that was playing, and because the music just does it to you, it kind of like draws you in and gets you all hooked on. Wow, at the end of the day, I mean, supply side economics sounds really good. And I'm here to tell you, like I said before, I do not have a problem with supply side economics. I think, unlike a number of people, I think I understand it. Now, I would say I probably need to understand it more, but here's what I can tell you in a nutshell about supply side economics. Supply side economics is geared around the individual who is willing to take risk. So, all right, let's deal with the first part first. It's geared for the individual. That means, unlike the Keynesian policy, a lot of that was top down. The government made these decisions from the 1930s and 1970s, 80s. But I'm here to tell you, during that period, you can't say that it wasn't prosperous, because that period of time created the largest middle class in U.S. history. Okay, but it's pretty much governed by the federal government, and they do a lot of spending in this space. And also Keynesian economics, of course, the top marginal tax bracket was like 92%, right? And I guess Kennedy cut it down to 70, and Reagan, when he by the time he left office in 88, 89, then it was really like 28%, right? So cut dramatically, but it was cut in favor of those people on the economic top, who then they basically said they were the wealth creators. They would create the opportunities, and then it would supply better jobs and all the like. Now, I don't care if you believe it or not, right? We, in another episode from now, we'll talk about the actual facts of supply side economics, but I'm just here to tell you that's what it is, right? It favors the individual. Now, the other part that I did tell you is that supply side economics favors the individual who is willing to take the risk. So when you look at the people who have gotten ahead in supply side economics, it's those individuals who have become entrepreneurs, those individuals who own businesses, right? Those individuals who have carved out a space. Maybe, basically, what I'm saying, anybody other than a W-2 employee, right? Now, you can say there are people in the mid-level management crowd that are making a few dollars. That's true. But on a whole, and again, those individuals, even if you look at it from that middle class income of upper management or whatever, you can say that that's your risk crowd, right? There's only going to be so many of those people, right, in the corporation. And much like any, when it comes to entrepreneurs, there's only going to be so many entrepreneurs, right? There's only going to be so many rich people. I'm not talking about a number here. I'm just talking about how people think about risk. And if you have that type of mind, then you will do quite well in the supply side economic environment. Now, when I say that, I then will tell you that there are a ton of people who are W-2 income who don't understand that risk quotient. They may be Republican and they may support the notion of supply side economics and can maybe point to maybe the issue of let's say tax cuts and say, yeah, I'm for that, right? But if they're not taking the risk, then I would say this is just my opinion. And again, folks, please comment. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. If doesn't take much to convince me, but have an argument, and we can look at it. I mean, I think that people who are rational and reasonable, like the show, we can sit down and disagree and agree on things. So anyway, so if you're willing to accept that risk, you'll do well with supply side economics. If you're not, W-2 individuals, if you look back over the past 40 plus years, and I'll show this in another episode, but it's created a lot of inequity. So, and you'll see that show up in some of the information that I'll provide with you. I think it's going to be the next episode and then episode 4. But in a nutshell, that inequity in the middle class is a huge driver where a lot of the angst today is. So again, favors the individual who is willing to accept risk, right? So those are the tenets. And now I could talk about the free trade part because that's important. You know, we came out of a period during the Keynesian period where, well, I mean, we dealt with tariffs and price controls and a few other things, right? And nobody likes that stuff unless your name is Donald Trump, right? I'm just telling you, 2018, 2019, those tariffs, ask any supply sider, tariffs are a tax. That's what they told us. That's what they told us for the past 50 years. And these guys, like Larry Kudlow and the rest of them, Larry Kudlow actually went up to the White House and had a heart attack. That's how much he had to bend the knee in order to accept Trump's ethos that these tariffs are going to generate income and wealth for the American people. The only thing those tariffs have done, created inflation. So there's that. But anyway, look, this is episode 2. We're getting somewhere, right? But before we get there, I had to tell you about supply side economics. Now that you understand supply side economics, it's time for us to go to episode 3.